You hear the like Nick Cannon is not like black funny, or like you get what I mean, or Wayne Brady, or certain people they don't consider them that, or Kevin Hart. I'll use a bigger name, Kevin, or not bigger, but just as much. Kevin Hart wasn't the same guy that he was in the beginning of his career, that where he at now, where they saying he's two type of funnies. And I'm realizing that I've learned so much that I can speak to everybody and not just the small demographic of individuals. And when I say small, I mean like I'm only speaking to the Philadelphia black guy, that because that's what I resonate with. It's like, hey, you can expand the conversation to speak to black men, you can expand it to just speak to men, you can expand it to speak to everybody. And so just trying to figure that out. So going back to your question about the Psychoanalytic Center, I've learned that again, creating equity is creating systems, and creating systems create support and really help change and help individuals.
All right, y'all, what's going on? It's your boy Izzy Bake Oven. What's up, y'all? So today it's a little different, all right? Now, yeah, I used to hear ads run through my stuff for other people. All right, this is probably the first real time the ad is for me. All right, so PSA, Prodigy Sport Advantage Stations, has expanded far beyond just the podcast. It is now a writing service, all right? That a ghostwriting service. So we do it anonymously and take care of your needs, all right? Homework assistant, product and profile descriptions, grant writing, resumes, cover letters, templates, books, ghostwriter book too. Anything you can think of, articles, all that good stuff. PSA, the Ghostwriter Solution, can do it. So go over to psathepodcast.com and you can see all the services there with all their descriptions, okay, because I know I missed some. And also you can reach out to me at theprodigyperspective@gmail.com and we can take care of all of that for you too. Peace. Boom. All right, y'all, what is going on? And this has been an interesting journey. I should say that this year. It's been a good one for sure. But as always, I'm interested to see like what's gonna come from everything. Thankful for all of the support, all of the reposts, the shares, because y'all, this is the 10th track, and we only got one more left. And I don't know. I felt like the way it's been going, I feel like I should be nominated for a Grammy or something. Like, because like I said, name somebody that's doing a podcast album. I know that you can't. You know what I'm saying? Because when I say it to people, the first thing they be like, they kind of look crazy. And when people looking crazy, guess what they mean? They mean you're doing something right, in my opinion. Let me know what you think. But it all just kind of, it just depends. All right. So let's get into this week's meme real quick. This week's meme says, I tried to open up about insert conversation and all my friends started laughing. So I wanted to be interactive this week, kind of do like a Justin LaBoy kind of thing. I want you to insert, what did you have a conversation with about any of your friends, family, and they started laughing? I could have added laughing and looking at you crazy, but I wanted to do that one because I feel like we've all been there. And I think my guest test too, we're going to get into that as we go along today. Difficult conversations. I think that sometimes we talked about difficult conversations a few weeks ago, many weeks ago now, but now we talked about it. But one thing we didn't talk about in that episode was the part about creating a safe space. So let's get into that this week because I feel like that's the part that was missing. So this week's inspiration comes from a few things. Not that many inspirations, but definitely a quote by Angelina Jolie. It says, I do believe in the old saying, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Our experiences, good and bad, make us who we are. By overcoming difficulties, we gain strength and maturity. And I definitely want to have a discussion about maturity in this episode as well. And then from Romans 15:1, we who are strong have an obligation to hear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. I'm going to get more into that as we go along with this episode. So be prepared for that. All right. let's move into the next section, which is happy hour. All right, so this week's happy hour, honestly, y'all, I don't have that much to talk about, but I will speak on this. Okay. So this was actually inspired by a clip I seen from Lex P and Dre Nicole from the Poor Behaviors podcast. And it was an old clip, but I want to speak on it because I feel like it needs to be discussed more. So one thing we need to do as a people, we need to bring back shame. And obviously, we don't want to have people living in condemnation because that's the difference. But when I say shame, as a community, have gotten too comfortable being okay with stuff that's not okay. People, the stuff that used to be a secret now is like the trending topic. For example, scamming. That used to be a secret. Now everybody brag about being scammer. You see them clips of them baddies auditions and them girls, the main thing they say is, oh yeah, I'm a scammer. That's a secret. You're not supposed to be telling everybody that. Like, that's something you do on the low. These scammers don't even put stuff. It was bad enough you put it on your close friends on Instagram. But now y'all getting to the point where y'all putting it on y'all main story. Tap in. Y'all still doing that? Like, I thought you were supposed to say, like, oh, I do hard work and dedication. At least lie to the people. I mean, in one angle, I guess it's kind of like oh, well, I'm being honest. And, you living in your truth because the world pushes that in this day and age. Some ways good and not so much. But come on now, really? You telling on yourself. That's wild. And it's crazy how we have normalized so much stuff that's really wild. Something else that they talked about and I saw in the clip, they were talking about how, like, bring back shame and how back in the day, women used to be a secret if you were sleeping with somebody's husband and having affairs. Now that's like a trend. Like, that's like a thing that's like a selling point for people. It's almost like a personality trait. Like, yeah, beautiful, nice body, still husbands. It's like now that's like in a like repertoire of things that they say. And dudes do it too. They stealing people's wives and girlfriends and bragging about it. Like, but then when you do stuff like that, you're revealing that there's some issues in yourself. It's one thing if you do it, but it's nothing when you brag about doing it, because it's like, why can't you have nobody? Or you don't never think like, oh, well, what happens if I get somebody? Do you ever think that far that this might happen to me? Because what you put out come back. But then again, you might not think that far because you might think, well, I'm going to just live this lifestyle for the rest of my life. And that sounds good, but that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And also back to the scammers. Scammers, y'all know y'all thieves, right? That's stealing. You're a thief. So I seen somebody, I had said that to somebody jokingly and they got real offended, but I'm like, well, maybe because, they say that the truth be offending people. So maybe that's what it was. I don't know, but I didn't lie. I told you the truth. You're a thief, fam. You're a thief. It's okay. But I just want you to be a little more discreet with what you're doing instead of bragging about it. What else people normalized? This one might get me in trouble, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. We have normalized being sick. Let me explain. This food is killing us. Some weeks ago, USDA just openly, while that submarine stuff was going on, it's been revealed that they have passed selling you lab meat, which is lab chicken and stuff. I don't know if there's all of them, but I know for sure chicken. I love chicken, but I might have to like kind of do something a little different, because that's the stuff that's giving you cancers and things. And we see in society how we've normalized and kind of celebrated. There's nothing wrong with that. We've celebrated sickness. We celebrate obesity. We celebrate things that kill us, the drunken lifestyle all the time. It's one thing you have a drink or two here and there, but you do this every single day. A lot of this stuff is in the same family, because if you think about it, if you a scammer, 9 times out of 10, you go to the clubs and stuff all the time. 9 times out of 10, you not eating healthy, so you eating a bunch of junk all the time. You drinking all the time. That lifestyle gonna catch up to you, because half of y'all ain't even in y'all 30s yet. But it's gonna start showing. It seems like as soon as you turn 30, it's gonna hit, and you're gonna see it on that biological clock. Keep that in mind, because it's been caught up. We didn't talk about people the weight last year. We ain't going back on that, but we can just talk about the old age. The old age. I can't wait till I turn 30 and do my 20-year challenge because I look way younger at this age than I did at 20. But I ate terrible and, you know, all that stuff. So let's kind of bring a little bit of shame back. I'm sorry. And I know it's kind of like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a, and what I want to say, oxymoron, kind of how we talk about today of creating that safe space for those conversations. But as we know, we have to get both sides of the ball, and I'm gonna get to more in that as we go along. But all right, y'all, I'm not gonna be here ranting all day because I could, but I have a guest today, and I want to. We've been a long time coming. We have been talking about this for I don't know how long, years. I know for a fact, years. And then we kept missing each other. And one day something had happened, but we're here today. So, and he on his first album. So, give him a round of applause for that. All right, my boy, what's going on?
First of all, you were getting in some nice conversations, man. I'm hoping we weave throughout them in today's talk. But thank you again for this opportunity to be on your platform and have the conversation. And like you said, it's been a long time coming, but timing is everything. So this probably is the perfect time. And you introducing me to the podcast album, I think you may want to trademark that. Because that might be the future of all these audio forms of content that's being put out right now. Like, how do you condense it into the space, into like something else? So, kudos to you for that, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Appreciate it, definitely. Thank you for noticing. But because the thing is, I Google it, and that's when you know you own something, y'all. When y'all had these ideas, you Google and you can't find it. That's when you own to something because the world has everything. But obviously, this is the visual. But for my audio people, can you tell the people your name, where you from, and where you live now?
So my name is Reginald A. Howard. I reside in born and from Philadelphia. So I'm based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Grew up at the baby New York, as they call Philadelphia. And it shaped a lot of my experience nonetheless, but what I'm sure we'll get into today.
Okay. Now tell the people about your foundation and the things that you do.
So there's a lot. For the main point of it is I try to use my different vehicles of communication support serving to help individuals. So consult for organizations like Black Men. I consult for organizations like Black Men Hill and NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. My day job, I work at the Psychoanalytic Center of Philadelphia as an educations program coordinator. I'm a fellow podcaster as well, with my podcast being Equity with Reginald A. Howard. Do various speaking engagements and also authored a self-published book entitled Suffering into Success, a paradigm shift to struggle to achieve happiness. So I just try to meet people where they at and utilize my different, skill sets to serve.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. So I'm gonna jump into a heavier question off the rip. So first of all, your journey from being a suicide attempt survivor to a health equity activist obviously is inspiring. So we shout you out for that. Now, can you start by telling us about the turning point that motivated you to use these experiences to make a difference?
So again, with the suicide attempt, I didn't know that I was having suicide attempts until I got the help in reading the information that I'm sure you do a lot of putting out there to the individuals today. And so once going long story short with the suicide, because I've told it many times, but for your listeners, just a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, a lot of different terminology that I didn't know I was feeling at the time of becoming a father. That led to me like texting my friends like, hey, take care of my son. I don't want to be here anymore. Fortunately, I found my friends found me on a bridge because they got my text message, pulled me off the bridge, but that still didn't, fix any of the pressures of me becoming a father and not having any money, not having my father, not having a job, all the different things that provide pressure. And I knew how I feel to be a deadbeat or be a son of a person that didn't have their dad in their lives. And I didn't want to be an in-person deadbeat dad where I'm not able to fully capable to take care of my son. And so that led to a second suicide attempt where I just found a bunch of pills and, tried to what I call self-checkout. And unfortunately, again, that same night I woke up to my godmom. She was one of those individuals that got that text message of like, take care of my son. I don't want to be here anymore. she brought me to her house, and what I now know was, and she didn't even have the terminology then, but I now know was suicide watch. She just knew it was like it was too much pressure, it was too much going on. It was that time when I just started getting information and researching and finding out about organizations like NAMI and learning about self-care, mental health, therapy, all these different things. So I think that would be the turning point in a long story short version.
Okay, good stuff. So I like that. Obviously, we're happy that you're still here, and and you can argue this if you like, because I got to push the boundaries just a little bit. But typically, when a person sends a message, and you tell me how you was feeling, but most cases when a person sends a message to people, whether when they were having a like, hey, I don't want to be here no more, that kind of thing. Do you feel as though subconsciously you wanted help when you did that?
Yeah, I always tell people when I talk about like suicide, I don't think I wanted to like end my life. I just wanted the pain to stop. And
Yeah.
so even with my friends coming to get me off of the bridge, and I thank you for asking that question, by the way. But even when my friends came and got me off the bridge, or even my godmom pulling me to our house, that was their versions of making the pain to stop, and they still didn't make it stop. And so I challenge a lot. I think, to your point, a lot of individuals that have those suicide ideation or even suicide attempts, that is their version of like, hey, I need help with the pain to stop, and this is where I feel like my only solution for the pain to stop. But if somebody would have offered me other solutions, like a treatment center or something like that, I wouldn't have been in that space.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the thing too, because I read that, but it is the truth. Like typically, if you really want to go, no one would know. And and I hate to say it like that, but that's just being honest, because if you look at these people who did commit suicide and nobody had a clue that they was feeling that way, they just found them dead and they was like, whoa, so a lot of times when you have friends, and this is for the audience too, when you have friends that's on social media making those suicidal kind of posts, that's their cry for help. So please reach out to them, call them, because that's kind of like their final attempt to see really if anybody cares, and that's even from experience that's kind of like their final thing. So keep that in mind and pay attention to stuff like that. Now, you briefly talked about your show, Equity with Reginald A. Howard. Now, your show, doing my research, and you tell me if I'm wrong, has gained a lot of attention. So what led you to start this podcast? Well, you kind of said it already, but if you go more in detail, what led you to start the podcast, and what do you hope your audience takes from each episode?
Yeah, so to your point, like I started it out of my own struggle, my own journey, but I realized that I couldn't speak for everybody's experiences. So I never been in the LGBTQIA community. I never been a woman before. I never been any of those different things, but I know trauma shows up differently for everybody. And so I wanted to interview individuals to share their story so that they know that they're not alone. And I recently transitioned my podcast from the Black Mental Health Podcast to Equity, because once I realized that I was having conversations and interviewing and getting education and material and information and putting it out to the people. But I started to get behind the scenes of organizations and behind the scenes of information, actually. And I'm like, we don't have no equity of resources to give out to our community. We can talk till we blow in the face, and that'll be great information. But if they go show up, for example, to an overwhelmed mental health system, then we're not going to get the services that we need to give out to our community. And if they go to those places and the people don't look like them when they go to those different places, then that also will deter them from getting the help that they're needing. So I have recently transitioned in that way because I want to start getting those equitable solutions out to the community as opposed to just having conversations about it.
Good stuff, yeah. And because, like I said, we can listen, and like I said, even with PSA, like I had to kind of, this is breaking the fourth wall a little bit. I kind of had to check myself because, I reached out to, and I'm not saying I'm gonna stop, so don't take that like that. But I was getting the big influencers and the big name people, but I had to remember this is a mental health podcast. So I still have to have people who are, I make the comparison to people when I say they laugh, it's like basketball wives, right? Because with basketball wives, everybody on the show ain't a wife. They either was an ex-wife or ex-fiance, ex-girlfriend, or current, whatever, or baby mama. So it's like they was affiliated in some way. So I have to make sure that majority of the guests are affiliated with mental health in some way, even if they're not a licensed practitioner. And like I said, the influencers are great, the fashion models and all that stuff. We're going to keep them too because everybody's opinion matters. But I had to check myself and say, okay, This is a mental health podcast, and if I'm the liaison, that's the narrative I'm pushing, then they have to be in that field because, yeah, my homeboy who is a travel vlogger obviously can give us help with decision making in that area with that, but in the same breath, we still need the resources. So I like that you did that. Okay. So when we talk about Industry Plant, that's the name of the album. If you could be a plant, what plant would you be and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. Do you want the the PG answer or do you All right, so if you don't want the PG answer, I'm learning more and more about the cannabis plant and not even just smoking, but just like what the other utilizations was for hemp and like for example, I'm a first generation American. And my family comes from Antigua and Barbuda, and I got a lot of Rastafarian uncles, and they outside of just the because I was never really a smoker, but they used to just tell me like the benefits of like hemp and the hemp seed and how it can like be woven into slippers and be utilized for other different resources than people villainize the cannabis plant and everything for it. And so if I could be a plant, I would want to be I don't want to say the good side because I feel like even marijuana has its benefits to whoever is utilizing it, but I would want to be the hemp plant that could be utilized in different services to help individuals.
Okay. Good stuff. Like I said, all of these, every episode, I'm surprised because not you think the regular plants, I hear something different every time. That is crazy. So that's good though. That shows that I'm on the right track because I'm bringing some out of people. So, all right. So now I have a few words and phrases, and I want you to tell me that when you hear them, the first thing that comes to mind. All right. When you hear the word maturity, mature, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Growth.
When you hear the phrase safe space, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Brave space.
Okay. And when you hear the word prime, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Say that again, prime.
Prime, Prime.
Oh, today or now, around there.
Okay. All right. So the definition of mature or maturity is fully developed physically, full grown. Safe space, a place or environment in which a person or category of people can feel confident. They will not be exposed to discrimination, criticism, harassment, or any emotional or physical harm. And then prime is the most active, thriving, or satisfying stage or period. Okay, good stuff. All right, so you was pretty close. All right, so now let's move to the next segment, which is what does this have to do with mental health? Because people be like have wondered that in the older seasons, so I had to niche it down to make sure they got it. All right. So the first question I have is mental health issues are often stigmatized, making it difficult for people to seek help. As a mental health activist, what strategies do you think are the most effective in breaking down these stigmas and making mental health care more accessible?
Oh, that's a loaded question. So the first thing that came to mind was conversations like this, having them open and having them the dialogue in that way. And I'm familiar with your work, but I know a lot of people don't do this. So I'll say for you, a lot of people don't lead with vulnerability. I don't know how big of a podcast fan you are of like all the podcasts that's out there, but a lot of people that speak, especially the up and coming ones, you don't know them. They talk, but you don't know that there's no vulnerability out there and leading with vulnerability. And I feel like a lot of information is received if you lead with vulnerability and you share an experience, you connect your shared experience like you did in the beginning of the podcast. You connect your shared experience with something that's happening because now people can find value in it and it seems more relatable. I think a lot of times we get the information, then you kind of get on your high horse a little bit, and then you act like you haven't been there. I'm with some of the things that bothering me now about like parents and they act like they haven't been young and understand. Like I get it, like you've been in that space, but don't villainize it. They gotta grow just like you gotta grow. You talk about maturity, so I think leading with vulnerability, having open conversations. And then the best form that I found, last but not least, is modeling. You need, if you're trying to reach a targeted demographic or whoever you're trying to reach, you got to have the model that looks like them, that they connect with. There's so many people that want to reach young brothers, but they don't have the rappers or the people that they look up to, like being the conduit of the information that they're trying to receive. And so I think just having those models that people can resonate with helps out a lot.
Absolutely. Good question. And like I said, you answered it. That was a fully loaded answer. So basically, the main thing is being relatable. Mm-hmm. And with any platform, with anything, if you're not relatable, it's kind of like, what we doing? You know, it's unfortunate because I look up on Instagram, TV shows, and you see so many different things of people. It's like the same person over and over again, male and female. And it's just like, we need something different, because even, and I say this all the time, and again, I take no shade at the comment made. I see there, I would be being shady. I take no, I was right. I take no shade at the comment made when the person had asked me, who had, it was like, oh, your podcast, you got some good stuff going on. But then they said, and honestly, do you think people care about what you're talking about? Mm-hmm. And I said, honestly, I say, yeah, but looking back, it's actually a double answer, yes and no, because they don't care about stuff like this. No, but if I'm weaving in the stuff we talking about, as far as that's on TV, that's on other podcasts, that's on these meme pages. Like I said, we had an episode early in the season about how to unbig your back. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I gave them 2 healthy solutions, which was protein and incorporating different styles of fasting. But the main thing is, it's a big topic right now, unbigging your back. Everybody tired of their back being big. It was summertime. It's like, so it's just finding ways to blend it. But again, everybody can't do that, or everybody has these teams behind them, which is another inspiration for Industry Plant, because one of my friends had commented and was like, one of my pictures that said Industry Plant. And I was just like, and I took it and ran with it, because I said, this might be a little prophetic. I might need to see what this is about. And obviously it didn't spur into this. So here we are. So good stuff. So now, with this correlating with mental health, so creating a safe space, obviously prevalence of mental health issues, according to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 4 people worldwide will be affected by a mental or neurological disorder. It says, given this, open conversations about mental health are necessary to reflect reality. The second one says reduction in stigma. Studies have shown the open conversation about mental health can reduce stigma, a major barrier to people seeking help. And then, according to National Institute of Mental Health, in 2019, among the 51.5 million adults in the United States who experienced mental illness, only 44.8 received services. This then goes to the next one, which says the improved treatment outcomes. For instance, according to the American Psychiatric Association, treatment success rates for depression, 60 to 80%, are much higher when diagnosed if treated early. And it says if mental health is openly discussed, then people are more likely to recognize these symptoms. And the last one is the support risk groups. Certain demographics, such as young people and racial ethnic minorities, are less likely to receive mental health services by having similar rates of mental illness. Open conversation can help address these disparities by creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable discussing their issues. Okay. And I don't want to say issue, because everything ain't an issue. Something is just, you feeling a way, because a lot of times, like I said, which we go back to the meme this week, which that's an example of immaturity. But when you tell somebody, you insert the conversation. So let me ask you, the meme read, I made a joke to my friends. It said I tried to open up about insert conversations and all my friends started laughing. Tell me a situation where you opened up to your friends about something and they started laughing.
So the low hanging fruit is mental health. Like that's the low hanging fruits. But when I sit with it, it's funny because today where we're recording, I don't know when it's going to come out, but I'm actually having a conversation with my friends on my podcast. And I was thinking about like topics, like what topics do I want to talk to them about? And one of them came up with and you said, what's something that we wanted, what's something that I brought up to talk about that they kind of laughed at. And I'm thinking about things that we grieve as men. And I say that in the sense of like, we're entering our 30s, and we balding, you losing your hairline, man boobs, dad bods, all these different things. You have to you're not that young whippersnapper. You got the big back or you got those different things, but no one talks about that. You got to accept them now. Like, because, or I don't even say accept them. There's a version of, if you don't do nothing about it, you have to accept that you're losing your hairline, for you can get the hair plants or whatever the case may be. And I think when we had that conversation a little bit on the surface level, I brought it up in passing. It was like a laughing, like grieving about something, but I'm like, that's a real thing. Like, people getting bald heads and can't do nothing about it. Your hairline going back and you can't do nothing about it. You developing the man boobs and you gotta really just sit with that and be like, man, I'm not the young guy anymore that I was. And now I got to compete with these young guys that they could just wake up and they look like however they is. And so I think that's one of the topics that's fresh on my mind now, is like grieving something in your manhood that you didn't realize you were losing until it was gone.
Okay, that's gonna be a good one, especially with people, because a lot, I'm sure you like me, you probably have different groups of friends in different circles, but you know your group, your main one, you don't really have these discussions with because they just don't get it. Mm-hmm. And so that's the question, and that's probably be a clip. What happens when you have friends at this young millennial age who don't get it? They don't get it. They don't get what you're doing. They, in some cases, don't get you no more. How does that affect your mental health? How does that deters the open conversations? Because one thing about me, and I've been told this by actual producers, that I'm a producer, and I've been producing and not even realizing it. And I'll say, like, and I've said this early in the season, shout out to my girl Melody, where I talk about, like, when I had different groups get together, or like when I'm doing a trip, I'll be like, this one can't go because she don't know how to act, or he can't go because he clashing with that one and he gonna start tripping. So I'm really good at differentiating, knowing who can go and who can't do what and who will be, So even with that, I think about you getting older, you having those conversations and knowing there's no point in talking to this person about that because they're not gonna get it, or they will laugh, or they will just kind of like sit there, not even because they just don't get it. So do you have the conversation even though you know they're not gonna get it? Because then the other half could argue and say, well, you ain't even try. So it's like, what do you do?
So to your point, and I've been talking to my girl about this. I think, and I feel like you have this already, just because you are even able to disseminate and delegate like that. You already have it. I think about the religious person that can come in most room. I don't want to say any, but 90, or the grandma. I'll use a grandma. Take religion out of it. That can command a certain level of respect in most rooms, just based off of their personality. And I use the religion because sometimes when a religious person come in the room, you won't curse as much. You won't have certain conversations. When a grandma come in the room, you'll be a lot more respectful. And so I use those analogies to say I'm learning more and more because of the value that my friends have in me, that I can have certain conversation. It's all in the presentation of the topic. And so, yeah, when I brought it up while we're like having a few drinks or doing that, it's not the best time to bring it up right then, but that doesn't mean I can't bring it up at all. And I've learned that, all right, with the right space, the right environment, I can bring it up, but I have to use the right wording and use the right language that make it resonate with the individuals who I'm trying to reach. So I may talk to my friends a certain way. I may talk to my girl a certain way. I may talk to my coworkers a certain way, but I can talk to them all about the same topic depending on the situation.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too. And I like when you said it would work, because like I said, we definitely differentiate, and we know, like, oh, we can't talk about this at work or like that. So it's good that you brought that up, those different angles. Like you said, going to drink or go and get some food or talking, it's different. And we have to know how to code switch. And it's not just, and I think growing up, we thought code switching was just between friends and work, but it's so many different levels with that. All right, so now let's get more into the plant part. So the prime maturity stage of a plant, also referred to as the full maturity or peak maturity stage. Now, as y'all may not realize, we have one more track left. So we're not quite at the final part of the plant's growth, but we almost there. So it is a critical period in the plant's life cycle where it reaches optimal growth and development. During this stage, plants exhibit their fullest expression in traits such as size, color, aroma, and often nutritional content. According to a study published by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, certain crops like tomatoes and peppers, when harvested at peak maturity, contain about up to 55% more vitamin C compared to those harvested at early stages of maturity. At prime maturity, plants are generally more resistant to disease and pests, displaying robust health and vitality. The stage is also when many crops produce their highest yield, making it the preferred time for harvesting in common agriculture. All right, so that's good stuff, good information, quick little science lesson. But I think it's interesting because, like I said, if it would have taken it earlier, it wouldn't have had as many of the vitamins. It wouldn't have been ready for, it wouldn't have been at its peak. And sometimes it's good to, and I believe, and I talked about this on the first episode of the track of the album, I'd rather God hold me back until I'm fully developed, fully there, because then I want to give them eyes, them cameras, that spotlight. When I get in it, I want to give them my best. I don't want to, you look at so many people, and there was a conversation, Pink, the artist, the singer, she was referring to in a, I'm going to leave the person's nameless, but a singer who was basically wilding out on camera. Yeah. And, they was having a moment. And she made the comment about the singer saying that she's glad that when she had her mess ups and her wilding out days, it was kind of hidden and not in the public eye. And so, granted, you can clean yourself up publicly, obviously, and then you can say, well, that ain't me no more. And a lot of people will go with you, but you're still gonna be them people that be like, nah, remember when you was doing this? And so it's good with like she was saying, like a lot of her mess ups and her screw ups you didn't see. So I think that's good too, especially along with the conversation, and that you can come up when you're fully in that good looking spot versus trying to have to get yourself together. All right, so now let's move to the next segment, which is I challenge that. So obviously this is the area where I'm going to challenge some things that have been said and challenging whether or not those conversations, and we kind of started in the last segment. But before we get to that, let me ask you a question. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. What does that mean to you?
Anxiety weighs down the heart, but kind word cheers it up. And what does that mean to me? And so my first reaction, I'm gonna just give you my raw reaction. I don't think anxiety always weighs down the heart. So I will pull. I challenge that. I will pull that part. Because some anxiety is good. For example, I know I want to be prepared for this interview or this conversation, so I'm a little anxious. But I know it's the anxious is because I want to do good. So it's not really weighing me down. It's like and changing that narrative with it. And kind words warming up. I'll agree with that part of it. Because just hearing like I'm proud of you, or you're a great podcaster, or I love the conversations you have and can cheer your heart up if it's not in the greatest spaces at the time.
Absolutely. So that was and obviously that's a different variation because there are so many different ones. I don't know which one it is, but I know it's Proverbs 12:2. So yeah, definitely. And I think he talks about how we say with anxiety, because it's good and bad anxiety. I'm sure from the way it's read is from the negative anxiety versus the good one. But still, it does, because again, you just don't know what you could say to somebody that would just, change the whole day. I said weeks ago, I actually thought about quitting podcasting, really, because it was just like it should be up higher now. And somebody DM'd me, and this is dude. I'm gonna shout him out again. Big Dog Podcast. Shout out to my boy. He reached out to me. He was just like, "Hey, keep doing what you're doing. You know how many people you're inspiring." Mind you, this man started podcasting after me, and he's at like over 60K. And so he was just like, when I first started podcasting, he was one of the people I started studying. And I'm like, and I'm thinking I'm about to quit. You know what I'm saying? And you then surpassed me at the moment. You know what I mean? You didn't surpass me, and you telling me I'm inspiring you. So that just goes to show you you never know what could save somebody's life. In your case, your life was saved from a situation, when you had your incident with suicide attempt, to me about to end my career, and you just don't know what one word or phrase can just shift somebody's whole view. All right. So you're the educational programs coordinator for the Psychoanalytic Center of Philadelphia. Can you talk a bit more about your work there, especially how it integrates with your personal advocacy for mental health?
So everything is in alignment. So within Well, everything that I shared today was more recent than as of not. For the past few years, I was the Black mental health guy. With the podcast, I worked for an organization, Black Men Hill. I was the senior program coordinator there. And then I felt like to your point of like about to quit podcasting, I kept feeling like I was hitting a invisible ceiling that I couldn't, break through. And I had decided that I was learning so much, and I explained it earlier about why I changed the name of the podcast, that I needed to expand my wings a little bit more. Like I can still, you hear the like Nick Cannon is not like black funny, or like you get what I mean, or Wayne Brady, or certain people they don't consider them that, or Kevin Hart. I'll use a bigger name, Kevin, or not bigger, but just as much. Kevin Hart wasn't the same guy that he was in the beginning of his career, that where he at now, where they saying he's two type of funnies. And I'm realizing that I've learned so much that I can speak to everybody and not just a small demographic of individuals. And when I say small, I mean like I'm only speaking to the Philadelphia black guy, that because that's what I resonate with. It's like, hey, you can expand the conversation to speak to black men, you can expand it to just speak to men, you can expand it to speak to everybody. And so just trying to figure that out. So going back to your question about the Psychoanalytic Center, I've learned that again, creating equity is creating systems, and creating systems create support and really help change and help individuals. And so learning what I'm learning now as the education program coordinator, I'm in charge of setting up the curriculum and the process of educating therapists who want to get trained in psychoanalytics. So I'm in that support. So to me, it's my back doorway as I go, as I attend school, as I learn more information, to really learn about the systems that's being set up of support. Because we've been, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Black community and people of color specifically, we've been marginalized out of systems. And yeah, we can, again, talk till we blow in the face, but we need to create that system of support to truly create change and equity within our culture.
Ooh, now I got ads in the middle too. All right, y'all. So I'm betting on myself even more. We already knew about the ghostwriter solution, right? Well, guess what? The ghostwriter solution is now on Fiverr. That is right. You know how like artists be having like ghostwriters and stuff, like rappers, some rappers, and like singers and songwriters. Well, guess what? I am the podcast ghostwriter. What does that mean? Content for your website, any show notes, any podcast descriptions, anything that'll make your podcast easily searchable, any other thing podcast related that requires writing, I can do it. You can also reach out to me personally. Obviously, it's the same email as earlier, theprodigyperspective@gmail.com. But you can also book my services on Fiverr. Now, I will be expanding more services, but for right now, I'm just a podcast ghostwriter. And I also can help with newsletters too for podcasts. So tap in. I should have had that defined, but yeah, I think that's what obviously what you're doing is good stuff, and how you branching out and expanding yourself, because we can't stay stagnant. I mean, even this is the challenge section though, because I will challenge that, because I am one of those people that have said that about some of those comedians, where it's like they get on and it's like, you said about the artists, the rappers and things, and they get on and it's like they start making the poppy kind of sound to, but I don't know. I think that it's interesting, because it is like, dang, are you selling out now? You didn't changing up your style. You changing up. I don't want to bring up this person, but I'm gonna do it. So I think of R. Kelly, music GOAT, right? I look at him as, even when he got on, I don't remember back in the day. I don't remember him making like the white sounding music. I feel like he was always him, and still saw that mainstream success. That was the first person I could think of. Y'all, please don't nail me to the cross for that. But seriously, I don't think of him. I don't see him changing his sound like that. I'm trying to think who else did, because you can argue both. You can argue, but with your situation, it's a little different, because it's like you want to touch everybody. And then again, you could say you want to touch everybody with the music too, but at the same time, you're not changing who you are to touch them.
Yeah.
Whereas,
No, and to your point, for me, I feel like there's the other side of that for me is there's other elements that I feel like I can't touch on, because it's kind of demonized within. I don't want to say demonized, because that's a little bit harsh, but it's criticized. Like I'm a heavy reader But if my friends around me don't read all these books, am I just supposed to keep that to myself, where I can connect with other individuals that's like, hey, that was a great book, or hey, that was a great conversation. I watch a lot of interviews. Friends don't watch a lot of interviews, but I be want to dive deep into those interviews and like really like go into it. And I know you can find your tribe, but I also don't want to alienate anyone because I'm trying to be held and hold it down and be in a certain demographic, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so that's a great segue because of the episode is centered around creating those safe spaces for conversations. So this is the challenge section. So like I said, are there areas where you shouldn't have those conversations? So the first one, it says, of the safe space, severe mental health crisis. In situations where individuals are experiencing a severe mental health crisis, such as actively suicidal thoughts or psychotic episode, it is crucial to seek immediate professional help. I think that's definitely. The second one is a good one, especially in today's age. The lack of training. If a person isn't trained in mental health support or crisis intervention, they might unintentionally cause more harm. According to a report from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, only 41% of people in the U.S. with a mental health condition receive mental health services in the past year. It is inappropriate responses can lead to other issues and other harm. Unwillingness to engage. If someone isn't ready or willing to talk about their mental health, forcing the issue might lead them to withdrawing even further. And then a study from Anxiety and Depression Association of America said that 36% of people with social anxiety reported experiencing symptoms for 10 years before seeking help. That's interesting to know. Then the last one I'm going to do is inappropriate settings. So even with that one, according to a study in the International Journal of Social Psychiatry, 38.6% of people with mental health issues reported being stigmatized in their workspace. Here's the thing. The inappropriate setting, that's the best one. Why are you talking about your mental health to your not your boss? Because there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're going through it. But why are you telling them people? This y'all. Look, so I remember years ago, I was at a friend's house and I was a kid, and the bill collectors called. Just listen. The bill collectors called. The lady, the one of the people at the house was like, "You calling me about these bills, and my son is on crack." And so in the background, somebody said, "You don't have to tell them people all your business." That wasn't the place. That wasn't the time and place. There's a time and place. Like that conversation is like a family thing. Granted, the bill collector don't know about your son and who he probably couldn't pick him out in the lineup. But it's the principle of you telling these people your business, and now they still gonna say, "Well, I understand. However, we still here to collect the fee." So I think it's just the making sure that like I wouldn't go to. You never know what people watch, but I wouldn't go to President Obama and be like, "Hey, President, you've been keeping up with Baddies West." Like he might, I don't know, because you never know who's watching it. But I wouldn't go ask them that, or I wouldn't go ask one of my homeboys who, one of the scammer friends, did he check out, Equity with Reginald A. Howard's podcast today? No. So it's again, that's the producer in me, that's the differentiating, that kind of stuff. So now you're also a community consultant with Coach Trauma Informed Healing. All right, so a Centered Practices Advisory Group. Can you explain to our listeners what trauma informed healing is and why it's so important for the healthcare system?
At its simplest form is putting the person first. And it sounds cliche to do that, but in a deep diver version of that is there are elements that affect the individual's mental health or individual's health that we are not considering. Like, for example, we may say that an individual doesn't value their health. They got the back fat. They don't value their health, but you're not taking into account that they can't make it to the hospital, like they don't have the proper transportation. So maybe if we assist in getting that individual transportation services, that will help their health equity or their health outcome. But even within that, yeah, now you gave them a travel, but what if they're a mom or a parent and they need a babysitter? So now, can you assist with them getting social services to have babysitters so they can get the proper health treatment? And so those are just a few examples. There are many more, but It's just assisting the making sure the individual is placed first, and with the coach collaborative, in particularly, is holding the health systems here in Philadelphia accountable into doing just that, and make sure they're considering all those different barriers that may cause unhealthy health outcomes.
Okay, all right, good stuff. All right, so now let's move into the next segment, which is the weekly sabbatical. So we know this is our time of reflection and just kind of unpacking some stuff, and then obviously gonna lead off with some tips for my people towards the end. But before we get into that, I gotta ask. So you read a book, you talked about it briefly. Suffering into Success: A Paradigm Shift of Struggle to Achieve Happiness. Can you discuss the major themes of this book and how it relates to your journey?
I use the same analogies. I talk in analogies because I've learned early. I know, but I've learned early on that the best way, and I think I've read it somewhere as well, the best way to get individuals to understand a concept is to teach them through something they already know. Because it's an easier breakdown of transferring information, because like, all right, I already understand that concept. So for women, I use it in the same concept of like pregnancy, whereas you go through back pain. Again, I don't know because I've never been pregnant, never will be, but you go through back pain, stretch marks, heartache, your nails, face, everything spreading, all these different things that people may consider bad, and they probably are. For the ultimate outcome of that prize of the baby. And so when you think about suffering into success, it's shifting that ideology that having a baby is bad, or looking at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I'm willing to go through all of this journey. I'm willing to go through all of this heartache, all whatever it takes to get there. And knowing that I can't even look at all of those things as bad because I'm getting this reward. When I talk to the guys, I talk about like being in the gym. Literally, you have to like break your muscles apart for them to grow, and that's going to be pain. That's going to be like hurt. You're going to feel achy. You're going to have all the ice packs and all the heating pads and all that stuff. But the ideal body is on the other side of that. And then the last thing that sparked it, that really like made me understand the concept, is how diamonds are formed. And you got people going in them coal mines and dying, and the coal mines, and not, that's even just one part that has its on those struggles, and then how a diamond is pressurized and heat up, and how it turns from this black rock or this uneven rock, and it has to go through all this type of tension for the diamond. But the tension, if you relook and reshape the tension and look at it as something that's like, hey, I'm getting a diamond after, it kind of makes the struggles and the things that you're going through in life a lot more easier. So I just wanted to conceptualize that, using my life journey, as well as like other figures, to let them know that, hey, whatever you're going through is preparing you for the inside of that.
And that's the thing, the conversation, one of the themes of this episode is relatability. And I think, and I know for a fact that when you show people, especially other Black men, that I've been through this too, and really other men in general, like I've been through this too, and I like how society is normalizing that. Now, we normalize a lot of BS, but we are normalizing that too, and that's good, because it just makes it to where it's like I'm not the only one. I'm trying to think. I think about the time where I seen it was a meme floating around a while ago, and it was Lisa from The Simpsons, and I remember she was looking up like this, and it was like, and she was, apparently the meme was basically like when you work your first day as a suicide hotline, whatever, that thing. And then it was like, and her response was, the question, she asked the question, which obviously is a meme, but it was like, so you finna kill yourself over a girl? And then they had somebody walk up and put their hand and say, go ahead and log out for me, baby. Now, although that is funny, it stirs up conversation, because now people saying, well, that's something I ask. And then it's just like, okay, but this is why people don't go to those safe spaces. This is why people don't open up about stuff, because, and I laughed at it too, but I laugh at it because I have a dark sense of humor. So I think like, this is horrible. There's stuff I've laughed at that I've been through, like, oh my God, this is terrible. But I have a dark sense of humor, so it is what it is. But ultimately, I have this enough sense to know, like, this is why people don't discuss what they're going through, because, and me and my friends, some of us messed up. We so messed up. We go through these horrible situations and we laugh about them with each other, although we know it's terrible. But that's how we communicate. So where some people say that's morbid and you need therapy, I probably do need therapy again, but it's just how we cope with it. And although when we're still taking the steps to get over. So everything is different. Again, even my journey is somebody out here like me that probably get, ostracized because of that dark sense of humor. They're like, okay, well, cool. I ain't the only one. So that's the main thing I think that we have with that. So that's good. Okay, so now my next question is, you encourage and facilitate conversations about mental health that are respectful and supportive. What challenges have you faced in this process, and what made it easy for you to overcome it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Challenges with like facilitating conversation with individuals, or like, okay. One of the biggest ones is, I'm trying to say this, I don't want to say respectfully, but in a good way, but encouraging somebody who don't want to hear it. Like they don't want to hear it. You can see what you identify as a need. You can see where you can offer help, but they didn't ask you for that help. You giving unsolicited advice that no one asked you to to provide. And so now, as I again going into my 30s, now as I mature, like you said, as I mature, I've learned to. I know another analogy. I learned about a story. I think it was a personal development story, and they talked about a lighthouse versus a rowboat. And if you think about the lighthouse and a rowboat in a dark sea at night and trying to help someone, they both serve two different purposes. The lighthouse doesn't move; it stays there. It shines the light, and it helps the people that looking to find their way. Whereas a rowboat, and you going out there as a rowboat, you about to be paddling, you about to be running and then you can go out there. The person may not be where they say they are, or they may pull your rowboat down. Now y'all both drowning, and then now y'all both in there. I'm aiming to be more of the lighthouse than the rowboat. And so, to your question about facilitating conversations, I've learned that you don't have to like chase everybody. You can just be a lighthouse and shine your light, and the people that need to find you will find you.
Okay, good. And I like that the people who need to find you will find you. You don't have to search out. You create the lane, and then people that's gonna get in it, they're gonna find it. All right. So this is my last question before we move to the next part. So you've worked extensively in the field of health equity. We know that. So can you shed some light on the role of socioeconomic factors in mental health, and what measures can be taken to ensure everyone has equal access to mental health resources regardless of their status?
I think the main one is information. The main, I think that's the biggest one is information. I don't know if you had this experience, Izzy, but I'm assuming you get health insurance, and we don't know what everything our health insurance covers. Like, we don't know all the things. It's like, hey, I can't afford therapy, but it's in your health insurance plan that you pay for, that come out of your check, or all of the services that is provided to us. We don't even have the time and energy to take out and look at the things that we're already paying for. And so I say information is one of the main one. And we talk about equity. I think another sister to equity is inclusion. And so you read off a lot of data and information today in this conversation. I don't know who the participants were. I don't know who formalized that data. Now, it's valuable because it sets a tone for a conversation, but we need to be involved in those information, those data points, and those scientific studies and all those different things. So I think inclusion is one to help with that. Information is one, and I'm trying to think of a last one. I use a cliche one, but I really do think it is especially for a conversation like that. It's inspiration. Like, we need to be inspired in something. Like, you can motivate people. Hey, you should do this. Hey, you should do that. But inspire is a transference of motivation. When something inspires you to keep going, like how you said that person that sent you the DM, that inspired you to be like, all right, I'm out here. He didn't say, yo, da da da. It was like, now it's something transformed inside of me and became intrinsic to keep going. So I think those three I's unintentionally: information, inspiration, and inclusion are good at attacking that socioeconomic factor that you spoke of.
Okay, good. So now, as we getting closer to the end of the episode, y'all know I always give my ways that we can do this. So what are some ways that we can create those open conversations? And of course, I did my research, and then of course my own personal experience. So along with all of that, I'm gonna read off some stuff, and my boy here gonna say some things he agree with it or add to it. All right, you ready? All right, the first one is leverage digital platforms. Millennials are known as the digital generation. According to a survey conducted by the American Psychiatric Association, millennials are more likely than other generations to discuss mental health online. Hence, online forums, social media groups, and virtual support groups can be effective platforms for these conversations. And then obviously, y'all extending that podcast, YouTube videos, discussions, and all that kind of stuff. That can just help to get the conversation going. Because it's kind of, this is a funny comparison, but look, this in the bio of the episode, I'm gonna say something about this to battle the analogies. But you saw how our generation, because we about the same age, I just turned 29, and you what?
31.
Okay. So same generation. You knew growing up, they embedded in us those commercials about the dangers of smoking, to the point where if you see somebody smoking a cigarette, you're judging. Like, what are you doing? Especially if they're young. If they older, you probably don't care. But if they our age, I'll even say anywhere between, at this point, I say 35 and younger. Maybe even, you go maybe about 35 and younger. You see them smoking a cigarette, you're gonna be like, what you got going on, man? Get you some weed or something if you're going to smoke something. Like, oh, I'm smoking no cigarette, because that's how they did it for us. So I feel like that next generation, how we talk so much about mental health, it's going to be so normalized that it's not going to have to be forced. So I think that's kind of, we on the same page with that.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is promote mental health literacy. Education is powerful. It just talks about it. Programs can lead to more positive attitudes toward mental health. And that was a study published in the BMC Public Health Journal, kind of like stuff that you're doing a lot of. Then the third one says implement mental health programs at work. I think this is good because everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur. Let's keep it 100. And even if you are going to be an entrepreneur, some people going to die with a regular job, and that's okay. It says that according to American Psychological Association, millennials are more likely to report symptoms of stress and depression than any other generation. Offering work mental health programs such as employee assistance programs can provide a safe space for discussion and seeking help. I think that's good because a lot of times we do have mental health days. I know even a lot of colleges now have mental health days in their schedules. So I think that that's good because it's a day you just don't feel it, and that's okay. This next one is encourage peer-to-peer support. That is just basically forming peer support groups. This can be creating safe spaces for those discussions. The fifth one, obviously, we ain't even got to delve into it, but it's normalize seeking professional help. We doing that just by this conversation alone. I think this one is a good one. It's the last one. Mindful language use. It says a study in the Journal of Health Communication found that a way mental health is discussed can be significantly impact stigma attitudes. Promoting mindful, non-stigmatizing language and mental health conversations can contribute to safer spaces. And I think that was a great one because it's just how you talking. Again, like we mentioned earlier, we laughed at it, but it's terrible. You was finna kill yourself over a girl. Like, you can't say stuff like, even if you thinking it, and that's your friend, they say some crazy stuff. Just, it's just kind of pay attention to your wording. And even if they text, especially if they text it. Now, this is what I will say. We talk about AI as a devil, and it low key is. But if, say, for instance, this is the thought that's popped in my head. Say a friend texted you what they're going through, right? They just text you what they're going through. You can copy the text message, put it on ChatGPT, and say, you may not know how to respond. Say, respond to this message in a way that's comforting, that will show empathy, and will cultivate them to feel that they are not alone, something like that. And it's going to give you some answers. It's going to give you a response.
That's good.
It'll give you a response. So if you can't do it right now, and then of course in my logic is you keep seeing something, eventually, your mind statistics say 6% of stuff that you read and watch don't sink into your brain. You ain't gonna remember most of it. You gotta watch it. They say like 7 times or something like that, or read it 7 times. So doing stuff like that, eventually it'll become your normal dialogue. I want to ask you, I have a few more questions. I'm only going to ask one more. So I'll just leave it at this one. So since we were talking about college a little bit, you made numerous presentations and currently studying health services administration at Drexel University. How has your educational journey influenced your activism, and what is your vision for the future of health services administration in relation to mental health?
That's a good one. So I've been doing this since the time we've been talking, trying to get this interview. I've been doing this a few years now, and I learned that I got a lot of practice hours and learning and being out there, and actually touching the people and being in the community. But I lack the theory that goes into creating these practices. And so now me having the balance of, so when you think about when you enter college, you're usually coming in a clean slate. Not they want you to have 10 years worth of experience when you put in a job, and then 10 years worth of professional, like I need to have the job. So I'm now in that space where I have the experience, and now I'm pairing it with the theories, and now I can utilize both of them to impact as I move forward. And that probably shifted, and you probably just opened that up to me, like to use forward. Like I think being in school has shaped like why I'm shifting the narrative of going into these different spaces. I don't know nothing about data. I don't know nothing about like the information, and going back to the analogy of the lighthouse and the towboat. I just know how to be the towboat. Like, hey, yo, y'all need me, yo, I'm gonna be over here and do this, do that. With the theory now, I'm becoming that lighthouse. I'm learning that, and now with the theory, you can create more lighthouse. And now you create a whole, boat row or whatever the case may be. And so that's how I think it's impacting health services moving forward. As I learn more theory, I get to learn more ways to, again, go systematize the impact and creating those, systematic changes as opposed to just a one-off, like helping people. I feel like it's I don't want to say it's an easier way, but it's a more efficient way of serving more people.
Good. And like I said, I look at you and remember I made the comparison analogy earlier, which I know it's funny and no one would ever think that, but it makes sense to hold on. I made the one about the basketball wives. So like even with you, if that's the case, if you will be the one that got pregnant and then they trying to make it work for the kids because you you the one that was like the jump off and then she got pregnant. We go, I ain't gonna leave my child. So and I say that they're making it work for the kids because you're continuing your you're continuing your journey in this field, whereas you would just stop at being an activist and an advocate, but instead you're getting your certifications, getting the proper tools needed so that because it might be that person that still try to be like, I don't take you seriously, but and even with me, like I'm not a professional at all, but I do great research. I got a degree in English. So my logic is if this is an interview-based podcast, I'm gonna go do the research, and then I want the expert to tell me like, oh, I like that, or I agree with that, or like, because I've had people say I don't agree with that. So we want to keep the conversation going and keeping people knowing that I'm not perfect, I'm not an expert, but I'm gonna go find it. One thing about me, I'm king finesse. If I want to find something, and not just even with this podcast, a lot of off-camera stuff, I'm gonna get it. And I'm going to find somebody. If I can't do it, I'm going to find somebody to get it.
That's it.
All right. So let's move to the final segment, which is the game time. And this game is called Toxic Safe Space. I'm going to name a few scenarios, and I want you to tell me whether it's a toxic space or a safe space for conversation, because we're talking about conversations. All right. All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Discussion with friends at a happy hour, drinking a bunch of brewskis about your suicidal ideations.
Definitely toxic space. It's not the best space to have those conversations.
Going to your apartment's clubhouse for a wellness Wednesday to discuss some things and some practices that you've noticed that will help with overcoming anxiety.
It's a wobbler, but I'll say toxic.
Okay. This is an easy one. Talking to your therapist about things that you've been just figuring out, having issues with amongst your family.
That's a safe space.
Chilling with a group of friends at your house, discussing ways that you would like to pursue. Having discussion with your friends at your house, discussing ways you would like to pursue therapy.
With your friends at your house, I'm going to say that's a safe space because you're in your environment.
Right. Going to a party to discuss ways, your friend having a mental breakdown at an event and you telling her, let's discuss this later.
That's a tough one. He has a breakdown at the event and you said discuss this later, but they may need to be discussed now. So you got to create the safe space in that moment because they're having a tough time. So I don't know what's the right answer to that, but we create the safe space.
All right, last one. Having a discussion about equity on equity with Reginald A. Howard.
Definitely a brave and safe space.
All right, so now y'all, for this week's question or challenge, y'all. So considering the importance of mental health discussions, what specific strategies will you implement to foster a safe space and open space for these conversations? And with the challenge part, y'all, I want you to just I want to challenge y'all to just start having those discussions with like just little stuff, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of pick people's brains, because everybody don't have the brain I have and don't the producer brain, but just kind of picking people's brains, just kind of just test the waters with conversation with your friends at those events where y'all eating and chilling at the house, just to kind of see where their head is at. You ain't got to divulge and go too much into detail, but just kind of see where their head is at. That's all I got for today. I think that, you know, the main thing is that we talking about a principle here of just making sure that you listen to people, you support people as much as you can, especially when it comes to their conversations, things they're going to. You know, it's a thing to confess your sins. All right, confess what you're going through. Don't keep it up, bottled up, and you just never know who you could be saving with that conversation. You could be getting it off your chest. So anything else you want to add before we dip today?
Last thing I would just say, like, I appreciate you for offering the platform to me. I appreciate you for the work that you are doing and helping with this, facilitate these conversations. To your point, you don't know how many lives you're impacting. And it's good to see people that you've been grinding. I don't want to say with, but like inspirational sparring partners of like every win that you have is a win for me, and it keeps everybody going more and more. Because it keeps you wanting to keep going. So I salute to you and the work that you're doing. And yeah, just subscribe to the podcast for more conversations. Subscribe to the Izzy's podcast. Subscribe to my podcast. And just keep these conversations going, because they well needed in the community.
Absolutely. So y'all, we are in for a treat for the next week. Next week is the final track, and it's the final part of the plant where they can reproduce and they can procreate. You're in for a treat with that one, because you just in for a treat. I'll say that. I'm not gonna give too much, but again, we had a great episode here. The last 10 tracks been great. The last one I got to end with a banger. So I appreciate you for pulling up on us today. I keep saying it's been a long time coming. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And I love us for real.